Clara Williams believed her husband Ethan was the perfect partner. Every overtime shift, every late meeting, she trusted without hesitation. But the lies began to unravel the night she found a hotel receipt in his jacket and a woman's perfume clinging to his shirt. What Clara discovered wasn't just an affair, it was a double life Ethan had been hiding for years. And the betrayal didn't stop there. It was darker, deeper, and more humiliating than she could have imagined. Stay with me until the end of this story, because Clara's revenge will leave you speechless. Clara Williams had built her life around Ethan. He was charming, ambitious, and always spoke of building a future where they could have it all. For 10 years, she believed him. She defended him when friends teased about his late hours. She praised him in front of her family, and she silenced every small doubt that tried to creep into her heart. But one evening changed everything. Clara was cleaning Ethan's blazer before taking it to the dry cleaner when a folded slip fell from the pocket. At first, she thought it was another business note. Instead, her eyes froze on the words, Grand Orchid Hotel, Suite Reservation, Friday night. Her stomach tightened. That Friday, Ethan had claimed he was working late on a big client presentation. Confused, Clara tried to dismiss it as a mistake, maybe even a company booking. But deep down, something told her this was different. The following weekend, Ethan came home later than usual. He smelled faintly of expensive perfume, a fragrance Clara didn't own. Her heart pounded. She didn't ask questions, she simply observed. His tie was loose, his shirt freshly pressed, and his smile carried an odd nervousness. Over the next days, Clara noticed more cracks in Ethan's stories. Restaurant charges appeared on their joint account, places she had never been invited to. She found selfies on his phone where the reflection in his sunglasses revealed a woman sitting across from him. Clara zoomed in. The woman was elegant, with striking features and long dark hair. Her name appeared soon after. A text message popped up one night when Ethan left his phone charging in the living room. It read, "Missing you already. Can't wait for our next night together. Selena." Clara's chest tightened. Selena, the name burned in her mind. But Clara didn't confront Ethan right away. Instead, she smiled through dinners, listened to his stories about overtime, and let him believe she was blind. Because in her silence, Clara began planning. She promised herself one thing: if Ethan thought he could live a double life, she would show him what it felt like to lose everything in one single blow. Clara sat at the edge of her bed that night, her heart pounding with a mix of betrayal and cold determination. Ethan's lies replayed in her mind, every overtime excuse, every late-night message, now making sense. The truth was cruel. He wasn't just cheating, he had built another life with Selena. But Clara wasn't the type to collapse under the weight of betrayal. Instead, a fire ignited within her. She opened her laptop, digging through old photos, bank statements, and Ethan's travel receipts. Slowly, a picture emerged. Ethan had been funding Selena's lifestyle, her designer handbags, her new car, even vacations. He was living two lives, and Clara had unknowingly been financing one of them. The discovery shook her, but it also sharpened her resolve. Clara knew she couldn't confront Ethan blindly. She needed proof and a plan. So she reached out to her childhood friend, Lucas, a tech-savvy private investigator. Lucas had always been loyal, and when Clara explained her situation, his response was immediate. "I'll help you. He won't get away with this." Over the next week, Clara and Lucas quietly gathered evidence. Hidden cameras, phone records, and social media patterns all painted the story of a man living two lives. Every new discovery pierced Clara's heart, but it also strengthened her will. She began documenting everything, knowing that one day Ethan would face the consequences. Meanwhile, Clara's parents, Margaret and Thomas, noticed her distant behavior. They assumed she was overwhelmed with work, never suspecting the storm she was navigating. Clara didn't share the truth with them yet. She couldn't bear the thought of their disappointment. One evening, Lucas called with chilling news. Ethan had booked a weekend trip with Selena under the guise of another work project. Clara's stomach tightened, but she saw an opportunity. If she followed him, she could catch him red-handed, ending his double life once and for all. Clara closed her laptop and stared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back was no longer the naive, trusting wife. She was sharper, stronger, and ready to fight. Her thoughts crystallized into one vow. If Ethan thought he could play me for a fool, he's about to learn who I truly am. The weekend arrived, heavy with anticipation. Clara sat in her car a few blocks away from Ethan's office, her fingers drumming against the steering wheel. Lucas was on the phone with her, guiding every step. "Stay calm," he reminded her. "We'll get the proof tonight." Clara watched as Ethan left work, not in his usual rush of exhaustion, but dressed casually, almost excited. He didn't head home. He drove straight to a boutique hotel on the other side of town. Clara's heart sank, but her resolve hardened. She followed at a distance, her breaths shallow as she parked nearby. Minutes later, Selena appeared, laughing as she joined Ethan at the hotel entrance. Ethan leaned in, kissed her openly, as if he had no other life waiting at home. Clara's chest burned, fury mixing with heartbreak. Lucas's voice cut through her thoughts. "We got them. Take photos, videos, this is what you need." Hands trembling but steady enough, Clara captured everything. Ethan holding Selena's hand, their intimate gestures, their carefree smiles. Proof, undeniable proof. For a moment, Clara felt like an outsider watching a film of her husband's betrayal, but the sting was real, raw, and vicious. Instead of confronting him there, Clara chose patience. She wanted Ethan to believe his lies were still safe, to keep digging his own grave. She quietly left, her evidence stored securely. That night, alone in her kitchen, Clara spread the photos and records across the table. Each image was a knife, but together they formed her shield. She poured herself a glass of wine, staring at the evidence of a life she never truly knew. Memories of Ethan's promises flashed in her mind, the forever vows, the whispered words of devotion. Now those same words felt like poison. Clara pressed her palm against the table, grounding herself. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was preparing for war. The next step was clear. Lucas advised her to see a lawyer before making any moves. Clara agreed. She wanted not just justice, but control. If Ethan thought he could manipulate her into silence, he was wrong. As the clock struck midnight, Clara whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." The double life Ethan thought he'd hidden was about to collapse, and Clara would be the one to bring it crashing down. The following morning, Clara woke up with a new kind of energy, not the kind that comes from peace, but the fire that rises when you know the truth and finally hold the power. She had spent the night reviewing every detail, every receipt, and every photo, memorizing Ethan's lies until they lost the ability to hurt her. Now, they were only weapons. She made an appointment with a well-regarded family lawyer, Ms. Harrington, known in the city for her ruthless precision in cases of betrayal. Sitting across from her in the polished office, Clara laid out the evidence. The credit card statements, the hotel bookings, the photos of Ethan and Selena together. Ms. Harrington leaned back, her sharp eyes scanning the documents. "Clara, this isn't just infidelity. This is financial deception, emotional fraud. You have enough here to strip him of everything he tried to hide from you." Hearing those words gave Clara strength. For the first time, she wasn't the broken wife. She was the strategist preparing her battlefield. Meanwhile, Ethan behaved as though nothing was wrong. He kissed Clara on the cheek before leaving for another so-called late night at work. Clara almost laughed at the performance. She had to play her role too, silent, composed, letting him believe he was still the clever one. But Clara wasn't just waiting. She was building her own support system. Lucas remained her quiet rock, offering both technical help and emotional encouragement. Ms. Harrington prepared the legal side, drafting the petitions and ensuring every loophole was closed. Clara herself began reaching out to trusted friends, slowly weaving a net of people who would stand by her once the storm broke. The contrast between Ethan's smug confidence and Clara's silent plotting was almost cinematic. He thought he was 2 steps ahead, when in reality, Clara was already miles beyond him. Every smile she gave him now was rehearsed, every nod calculated. She wasn't his blind wife anymore. She was his executioner in disguise. One evening, as Ethan stepped out with his phone buzzing suspiciously, Clara whispered to herself, "You promised me forever. You'll regret breaking that promise." The war had officially begun, and Clara was ready to make her move. The day of reckoning was approaching, and Clara could feel it in the air like the calm before a thunderstorm. Every piece of evidence was neatly organized in a folder: receipts, photos, texts, even audio recordings of Ethan's whispered conversations with Selena. Each page told the story of betrayal, but to Clara, it was no longer pain, it was power. Her lawyer, Ms. Harrington, set the plan in motion. The divorce petition would be filed at the exact moment Clara confronted Ethan, ensuring he would have no chance to twist the narrative. Lucas, who had become Clara's most trusted ally, arranged for the confrontation to happen in public, where Ethan's arrogance would have no shadows to hide behind. Clara invited Ethan to dinner at one of their favorite restaurants, the very place where he had once promised her a lifetime of love. The irony wasn't lost on her. She arrived early, calm, and elegant, her folder placed discreetly by her side. Ethan walked in minutes later, wearing that same smug smile that once charmed her but now only reminded her of the lies. "Clara," he said smoothly, sitting across from her, "you look beautiful tonight." Clara returned his smile, steady and cold. "I'm glad you think so, Ethan. Tonight's a special night, one you'll never forget." He raised a brow but said nothing. As the waiter poured their wine, Clara slid the folder across the table. Ethan's hands faltered as he opened it, his confident mask cracking piece by piece as he scanned through the damning evidence. How did you?" he stammered. Clara leaned forward, her voice low but sharp as steel. "You thought you were clever, living two lives. But the thing about double lives, Ethan, is that eventually one collapses. And tonight, it's yours." At that moment, Ms. Harrington entered the restaurant, her presence commanding. She handed Ethan the official divorce papers right at the table. His face drained of color as the reality sank in. This wasn't just a marital fight. This was a carefully orchestrated takedown. Other diners had started to notice the scene, whispering, watching Ethan squirm under the weight of humiliation. For once, the power was entirely in Clara's hands. As Ethan sat speechless, Clara rose from her seat, her voice steady and final. "You promised me forever, Ethan, and tonight forever ends." She walked out, leaving him with nothing but the wreckage of his lies and the certainty that his double life had just been destroyed. The weeks that followed were a storm for Ethan, but for Clara, they were the beginning of peace. The divorce moved swiftly, thanks to the ironclad evidence Ms. Harrington had presented in court. Ethan tried every trick he knew, pleading, threatening, even attempting to paint Clara as the villain. But the truth was undeniable, and every lie he spun only made him look smaller, weaker, and more desperate. Selena, once so smug in her stolen role, disappeared from Ethan's life the moment his reputation and finances began to crumble. The lavish gifts stopped, the expensive dinners ended, and the fantasy she had bought into vanished overnight. Clara heard whispers through mutual acquaintances. Selena had already moved on, leaving Ethan in ruins. Meanwhile, Clara embraced a new life. She poured her energy into her career, where opportunities began opening like doors she never thought she'd see. Lucas's steady support gave her strength, but he never overstepped. He knew this was Clara's victory to claim, her story to rewrite. For the first time in years, she felt control, not of Ethan, not of circumstances, but of herself. The final court hearing was a turning point. Clara stood before the judge, head held high, as the divorce was finalized. Ethan sat across the room, hollow-eyed, a shadow of the man who once thought he could live two lives without consequence. When the judge awarded Clara both her share of the assets and the home she had built with love, Ethan's defeat was complete. As they left the courtroom, Ethan muttered, "You'll regret this, Clara." She turned, her expression calm, her words cutting like glass. "No, Ethan. The only thing I regret is believing you were the man you pretended to be. Now I finally know the truth, and the truth set me free." That night, Clara returned home to a quiet house, one no longer poisoned by lies. She poured herself a glass of wine, stood by the window, and let the silence wrap around her. It wasn't loneliness, it was freedom. Her story was no longer about betrayal. It was about survival, resilience, and reclaiming her voice. And as she whispered to herself, "Forever doesn't end in betrayal. It begins when you choose yourself." Clara knew she had won not just revenge, but her life back.